Hello there. I am so beyond thrilled to introduce you to this collection. This is called Vivacious, and this is my first cotton lawn collection in a very long time. Some of you have probably been sewing with my fabrics long enough to remember my Little Folks voile collection, and back in those days, we talked a lot about voile and voile. And now we're all speaking the same language. All we have to do is say lawn. But I want to talk to you about what this actually feels like. Those of you that remember my voile fabrics, remember that buttery soft feeling, 100% cotton, tightly woven, suitable for so many things, whether it's garment or quilt making or home deck or applique. This is no different. These have, even though we call them lawn and the mill where they're produced calls them lawn, they have the exact same silky feel that those fabrics I had made years and years ago have. But what's a little bit different about my approach to lawn now is that you might remember Little Folks was a bit of a sweet, kind of almost baby and kind of tiny scale prints. It ended up being used for garment and it was wonderful. But I really wanted to approach Vivacious with exactly that, like really bold, beautiful, but also just romantic and stunning prints. Things that would be beautiful both for fashion as well as for patchwork, because that's what I do, and I love both of those things equally. So I thought I would introduce you to each of the 12 pieces, print by print. We have 6 different designs, and they each come in 2 different colors. And the first one that I'm gonna show you is called Tapestry. And you guys, I have to disclose that I worked really hard on this print. I was just really enthralled with the forms and the variation of types of flowers in a bouquet that I received when I moved into my house this last year. I received this gorgeous bouquet that had so many types of flowers and colors, and as I was choosing what I wanted to do to make a print, I really couldn't narrow it down. I didn't want to make just a Gerber daisy print, which I've actually never done. And the mill did an absolutely unbelievable job on the screens to get across that, all those highlights on those petals. It was such a joy to get these fabrics back. But I couldn't decide, I could not narrow down for it to be a rose print or a daisy print. I had to include all of them. And just all the different forms and textures of the flowers really had me start feeling like they were kind of forming this tapestry. And that's what ended up being the title of the print, and also inspired sort of these little almost needlework type lines in the background that I think really truly weaves all the colors together. So I'm so excited about this print. This is the one colorway, which I can't remember colorway names off the top of my head. This is the second colorway. It's extremely sunny. I just wanted it to seem like sun was just beaming in on these flowers. And because I'm really interested in seeing these fabrics used for fashion, I really also thought about like colors that people like to wear, what you want to have on a blouse or a dress, as well as really bright, bold prints for your patchwork. So we have this big, large but also medium and small scale print, but a big overall impact. And then we have this new one called Fan Club, which is just a fantastic, I won't call it a basic because that makes it sound boring, but it is a fantastic coordinate, I guess, or a mixer, we might call it. So this one is a little bit more purpley blue. And I like doing traditional prints, but very hand-drawn, so sort of imperfect, like it's not very, computer-generated type scallops. This is another color. I love this color. I really want to do a blouse or PJs or something out of this. And then the rest of the prints, you will probably recognize some of the forms. This one is called Natural Order. And those of you, again, that have been following, look how drapey these are and how much they just squish. I love that about these fabrics. Those of you that have been following my collection since the very beginning, back in 2005, you might remember this zinnia, which originally was a very big zinnia, and in my drawing room collection, which was a home deck weight. These butterflies are they're from my passion flower collection. These chamomile kind of daisy looking flowers came out of my Pretty Potent collection. But all that to say, I just reordered some of these forms that are favorites of mine that I want to see again, put it on a stripe. And what's cool about this is if you're patchworking with it, there are so many of those flowers if you want to fussy cut them across a width. And speaking of width, these are 54 inches. So that really gives you almost a backing for small quilts without having to piece it. But again, that fussy cutting, you have a lot of flowers in just a short, like in 1 yard, you probably have, I don't know, 40 flowers at least, if not 50. So that's pretty cool. But this print is called Natural Order because I really was just truly reordering some natural elements. And then here's a very kind of plummy and golden yellow colorway that's really fun. I love seeing this as just a floral but also a stripe. And this is another motif that I took from my drawing room collection. This was actually the background of the zinnia print from drawing room. But I've exploded what the background texture was and kind of shrunk down what the main features were. But I also had done this as just a regular print on cotton in my Good Folks collection, some of you might remember. And it was just a really nice textured geometric with a little bit of sort of vintage interest, but this is a fun scale for this one to be. And then we have this really saturated, kind of not quite minty and not quite jade, but sitting on a really just basic sky blue, which I absolutely love. But you'll notice that the fabrics, they take the color of the inks and the dyes really beautifully. I think what's kind of different about this collection compared to my regular quilting cotton collections is that they feel vivid like I normally do, but something, I think it's probably just the weave of the fabric and the slightly more sheer quality of the fabric that has all that color kind of sitting in a little bit of a softer aura. It could be just because I know what they feel like, so they all feel like bright but also soft, but I think you're really going to enjoy that. And you will recognize this beautiful cabbage rose from clippings, but I decided this one is now called Show Off because I decided that this really deserves its own stage to perform on. And so I just worked in kind of this lovely thorny background to really let those roses do their thing. You can see like fun coordinating opportunities already as you go from these mixers to these more feature prints. And this one is really fun. This is like berries and mango and melon and pineapple and bananas, but also blueberries. Like I love this. This just feels very fruity and natural to me. But I want to talk about a little bit about the sheerness. You really, unless you have light coming from the back of it, they are still a pretty opaque fabric. So like if I were making a blouse, I probably would not worry about lining it. If it were a summer blouse, I probably wouldn't worry about even wearing a camisole under it. If it's a dress, I'm always more likely to want to wear a slip than I am if I'm worried about being out in the sunlight than I am wanting to line it. But of course it depends on what pattern you're sewing. But just those of you that are garment sewers, that's kind of like where I sit with this. Like I actually think that these are fine as a single layer in the summertime, particularly in the evening, and there's no sunlight beaming through it. So they're not really, really sheer. The thing that's so great about these fabrics for patchwork too is that compared to quilting cotton, actually, when you cut these fabrics, they don't want to really open. It's a tighter weave woven from smaller threads. So while they might be finer, they feel almost more stable on the edges when you cut them. So it makes it absolutely beautiful to do patchwork with. And so you can keep your confidence there in terms of including these in quilts. And because I thought so much about fashion, I had to, of course, include leopard. And we just called this Spotted. Has a really pretty charcoal navy background, kind of background stripe against those almost black, but not quite. It's really like an inky blue black. I think it'd be really stunning in some garments. And then just a really more natural, straight up leopard. I have also, speaking of patchwork, I have this beautiful quilt behind me. Because I was only working with 12 fabrics for the Vivacious collection and quilt, I really wanted to focus on just letting the fabric shine and doing something really straightforward. So this is a pattern, it's just called the Vivacious quilt, and you can see it's just basic squares on point with sashing and these little cornerstones, but it really, with the color arrangement, lets the fabrics shine. We actually are planning a backing to go with Vivacious. We don't have it ready yet, but we put one of my hindsight backings on here, which I think is pretty awesome. So right now this quilt has lawn on the front and our regular backing cotton on the back, and it has such a beautiful drape. This one is actually pretty densely machine quilted. I really love hand quilting voile and lawn. I need to get used to calling this lawn because that's what it is. But I'm going to be sharing later some of my techniques for hand quilting to try and arm you with some confidence to approach these with fabrics with patchwork. For someone that is really happy spending all day hand quilting, I will tell you that doing so with lawn or with voile compared to quilting cotton saves your hand. The needles just sink right into the fabric so beautifully. But this is a pattern that's going to be available for Vivacious. Again, like very simple patchwork, no applique. I gave you a break. There's one other beautiful quilt here that Free Spirit had made. This, I believe, was made by May Chapel, and it's called Gale's Lattice, and it's a really simple, I'm just gonna try and throw it on the table here. It's a really simple patchwork, again, and I think it just uses 1, 2, 3, 4 fabrics. So you can imagine how this one could be really changed up with the use of different fabrics or the whole collection, or mixed in with some of your cottons. And I really do want to inspire and encourage you to mix this weight of cotton with your other cottons, your quilting cottons, anything that is special and beautiful to you. Because they all are 100% cotton, I find they work really fine together. And I've never had any issues mixing different weights. I thought she did a really clever thing on the back where she used the voile on the back too, and she just used 2 widths of the leopard, and then she put a stripe right up the middle. So that leopard makes a fantastic backing. It was really clever. She didn't even have to worry about matching spots. She just threw another stripe of that different print up the middle. So while we're speaking of fashion, I wanted to share this pretty dress. This is my first draft of what we decided to call, let me squeeze in here, what we decided to call the swing set dress. And we called it the swing set dress because it's flowy, it's fun, it's swingy, it's airy, just like swinging on a swing set. I've had the idea to do this dress for a while, and my hope is to put this pattern within my Simple Start collection of patterns, which are a really straightforward collection of patterns that are focused on skill building. This has no zippers, it has no buttons, it's just casings at the top here that carry this beautiful sash that's drawstringed through it. I used just about a full width of fabric on this dress, but you can see just when I move it how flowy and beautiful it is. And there's a lot of width on that casing, but you can see it cinches up so beautifully. And it's not extra bulky like a quilting cotton might be. If you did the same thing, it would be really chunky and be hard to like pull the drawstring through. So this is a pattern that's in the works, and I can definitely imagine this in all sorts of lengths. Like at the moment I have it sort of sweeping the floor, but I can certainly imagine it as a little short dress for almost like a beach cover up, or tea length for something more elegant. So that's the swing set dress. And it was really fun to choose coordinating kind of, again, that mixer print to go with a more feature print. But super excited about that. Super excited that for me personally, I haven't had a home studio in about a year because I've moved house, and I'm planning to have, I'm working right now to get one built on my new property. And so I've had space at this wonderful shop to come and sew, but without having the machine just right there next to me, I have not been sewing as much, and I certainly haven't been garment sewing, but just having these fabrics in my hands has really enlivened and inspired me to start thinking in terms of garment. So I'm looking forward to sharing more with you, sharing the backing that we have planned for these fabrics, which will be our regular backing weight, by the way. It's not going to be out of this weight fabric, but I'm also going to share some like practical tips on sewing, just a few small different things that you might want to consider when you're sewing with lawns in your patchwork or hand quilting, as opposed to sewing with regular quilting cottons. But as always, I appreciate your enthusiasm, and I cannot wait until Vivacious gets here in August of this year, which is 2022. Okay, bye.